WWE February 25, 2026 Obafimi brutal attack on Brock Lesnar. WWE Raw 2026 highlights. Obafimi vs Brock Lesnar just got handled. Not competed with. Not matched. Not pushed to his limit in a hard-fought physical exchange between two elite competitors. Handled by someone who has been on the main roster for a fraction of the time it took Brock Lesnar to become the most feared name in professional wrestling history. By someone that a significant portion of the casual WWE audience was still being introduced to as recently as 90 days ago. By someone who looked at the most physically dominant force this industry has produced in the modern era, a man with legitimate UFC heavyweight championship credibility, a man who has conquered every mountain professional wrestling has to offer and treated him like an obstacle rather than a legend. On February 25, 2026, on WWE Raw, Obafimi did something to Brock Lesnar that nobody saw coming and nobody, regardless of which side of this they are on, can stop talking about. And the reason this is not just a shocking television moment, the reason this is not just a viral clip that trends for 48 hours and gets filed away in the highlight archive, the reason this is the most important thing that has happened on Raw in 2026 is what it means. What it means for Obafimi's place in WWE's present and future. What it means for Brock Lesnar's standing in a company that has built major event programming around him for over 2 decades. What it means for the entire power structure of Monday Night Raw heading into WrestleMania season. And what it means for every person on that roster who has been watching Obafimi's ascent with the specific mixture of professional respect and professional anxiety that accompanies watching someone arrive who is genuinely better than you thought anyone could be this fast. February 25th changed something. I am going to tell you exactly what. And by the end of this video you are going to understand why this night belongs in the conversation of the most consequential Raw episodes of the decade. Do not go anywhere. There is a specific phenomenon in professional wrestling that occurs when a talent's reputation, the version of them that travels through word of mouth, through NXT viewership, through dirt sheet coverage and social media clips, arrives on the main roster ahead of the actual person. The audience has been told what to expect. The industry insiders have been talking about the ceiling. The metrics have been cited. The superlatives have been deployed. By the time the performer themselves arrives at the level where the widest audience can see them directly, there is already a version of them living in the public imagination. The danger of this phenomenon is that expectations become the enemy of genuine amazement. When you have been told something is extraordinary, your brain is primed to audit rather than simply experience. The moment loses the innocence of pure surprise. Obafimi destroyed that dynamic entirely on February 25, 2026. Because what he did to Brock Lesnar on Raw was not something that the word of mouth, the NXT highlights, or the industry reputation had prepared anyone for. It exceeded the pre-arrival narrative so completely and so immediately that the audience did not have time to audit. They could only react. Here is what you need to understand about Obafimi before we get into what happened on February 25 specifically. This man is not a project. He is not a work in progress being given main event opportunities because the company needs a fresh face and he happens to be physically impressive. Obafimi is a finished product in the ways that matter most. At the highest level he has the physical gifts, yes, the kind of athletic profile that only appears in this business once every several years, but more critically he has the psychological maturity and the competitive intelligence to operate within those gifts rather than simply existing inside them. The difference between an athlete who has extraordinary physical tools and a professional wrestling main event performer who has extraordinary physical tools is the ability to make those tools mean something in the moment the story demands it, to deploy them with purpose rather than with exhibition, to be terrifying not because of what you can do but because of how you decide to do it and when. Obafimi on February 25 demonstrated that distinction with complete and absolute clarity. Against Brock Lesnar, the hardest possible examination. And he passed it in a way that should make every person on the Raw roster very, very uncomfortable. The context of where Brock Lesnar was heading into February 25 is not a minor footnote to this story. It is essential framework for understanding the full significance of what Obafimi did on Raw. Brock Lesnar had been part of an incredibly charged 48-hour period in WWE. The events of February 24, Roman Reigns' return, the confrontation with Paul Heyman, and the physical escalation that put Lesnar in the position of dealing with a version of Roman Reigns that was operating without the usual boundaries of professional restraint had left Brock Lesnar in a specific physical and psychological state coming into Monday's Raw. Brock Lesnar does not absorb situations quietly. He is not a man who processes adversity through introspection and emerges calmer. He processes it through physicality. Through the specific catharsis of putting his body through something demanding enough to silence whatever is competing with his focus. Brock Lesnar walking into a Raw arena after what happened on February 24 was Brock Lesnar carrying something heavy, something that was sitting right below the surface of his competitive composure and that the right provocation or the wrong one, depending on your perspective, could release. Obafimi was that provocation. And the question of whether he knew exactly what he was walking into, whether he understood the specific state of the person he was choosing to confront on February 25th and chose that moment deliberately because of it rather than in spite of it, is one of the most fascinating questions this situation raises. Because if Obafimi targeted Brock Lesnar on this specific Raw, on this specific night, with knowledge of the fuel that was already burning inside the beast incarnate, that is not just athletic confidence, that is tactical genius operating at a level that veterans twice his experience rarely demonstrate. If it was instinct rather than calculation, if Obafimi simply followed the competitive gravity of the moment without the full strategic awareness of what he was stepping into, then what he did on February 25th is even more extraordinary, because it means the outcome was produced not by planning but by pure, overwhelming natural capability. By someone who is so good that they do not need the advantage of perfect timing, who is so good that they can produce results like February 25th even when the conditions are as dangerous as they could possibly be. Either reading is terrifying. Either reading tells you something about Obafimi that the WWE Universe needed to understand immediately. Let's go through what happened on Raw on February 25, 2026, with the granular attention it deserves. Because the way this confrontation unfolded, the specific sequence of events, the way the arena reacted in real time, the way the people backstage are describing what they witnessed from the other side of that curtain contains information that the highlights do not and cannot fully communicate. The early part of Raw on February 25 had Brock Lesnar's presence hanging over the show the way it always does. Not in a segment, not in an announced match, simply in the knowledge that Brock Lesnar was in the building. That knowledge alone changes the architecture of a Raw. It changes how talent move through the show. It changes the conversations backstage. The presence of Brock Lesnar in an arena is a gravitational event that affects everything around it. Obafimi was not affected the way everyone else was. And the people who were watching him backstage in the hours before the confrontation, people whose names I am not going to put in this video but whose observations have been confirmed through multiple channels, described someone who was operating with a specific kind of focused calm that they had not seen from a talent at this stage of their main roster career. Not the performative calm of someone forcing composure they do not actually feel. The genuine calm of someone who has made a decision and is waiting for the right moment to execute it. When Obafimi and Brock Lesnar occupied the same space on Raw February 25th, the arena's reaction was the specific combination of electricity and held breath that the most significant confrontations generate. The audience understood immediately what they were watching. Two generational physical specimens. Two men whose physical credibility is not constructed through smoke and mirrors but through the very real and very visible reality of what they are capable of. The size comparison, which favors Lesnar in terms of established reputation and favors Femi in terms of the specific trajectory of rising threat, was visually striking in a way that the camera captured perfectly. Lesnar's initial response to Obafimi's presence was the specific kind of measured, predatory attention that Brock Lesnar deploys when he is genuinely evaluating something rather than performing evaluation. He looked at Obafimi the way he has looked at very few people in his career, with the specific focus of someone who is making a real-time assessment rather than running through a planned script. That look alone told the audience that this was different. That whatever happened next was not going to follow the expected dramatic beats of a standard confrontation segment. What Obafimi did next, the specific way he initiated the physical escalation, the decisiveness of it, the refusal to allow the confrontation to exist in the space of circling tension that Lesnar's presence usually creates, is the detail that everyone is going to be talking about for weeks. He did not wait. He did not allow Brock Lesnar to set the terms of engagement the way every competitor who has faced Lesnar in the last 2 decades has allowed. He took the terms away from Lesnar before Lesnar could establish them. In that instant, in the specific window between Obafimi moving and Brock Lesnar processing that movement, everything about the power dynamic of this confrontation was decided. Not by strength, not by size, not by competitive record or by legend status or by the accumulated weight of everything Brock Lesnar represents in the history of this business. By timing. By decision-making. By the specific courage of someone who does not yet carry the scars of every previous time courage like this was punished. The attack itself was something that the Raw arena processed with a delay, that specific few-second gap between a thing happening and the crowd's brain catching up to the reality of what their eyes just saw. And when the reaction finally came, when the arena caught up to February 25, 2026, it was the loudest sustained noise that Raw had generated since Roman Reigns returned 24 hours earlier. Brock Lesnar on the receiving end of something from Obafimi. Not in a scripted match conclusion with a predetermined result and a planned sequence of events designed to protect both men's credibility in specific ways. In a confrontation that felt real because the energy of it was real, because Obafimi's commitment to it was real, because Brock Lesnar's response, the fury, the disbelief, the specific look of someone who has not been treated this way by someone at this stage of their career and is fully and immediately aware of what just happened, was real. Here is the layer of February 25th's story that the mainstream coverage is not getting to and that Wrestling News CC's audience deserves to have. The reaction within the Raw locker room to what Obafimi did to Brock Lesnar on February 25 is not uniform. It is not simply universal amazement or universal alarm. It is more complicated than that, and the complexity is revealing. There is a group of people who have been closest to Obafimi's development, who have watched him work in every environment, who have been in the ring with him and understand at a technical level what he is, who are not surprised. They are gratified. They have been saying for months that the ceiling conversation around Obafimi was being conducted at the wrong altitude, that the people discussing his potential were still thinking too small. February 25, to these people, was not a shock. It was a confirmation, an overdue public announcement of something they have known privately for a while. Then there is the larger group, the veterans, the established main event names, the people who have built their WWE careers on specific competitive hierarchies and specific assumptions about who belongs at which level of the card, whose reaction is more complicated. They watched what Obafimi did to Brock Lesnar on February 25 with the professional admiration that legitimate ability always generates from legitimate competitors. But underneath that admiration is a recalibration that is not entirely comfortable. Because if Obafimi can do what he did to Brock Lesnar, to the name that has functioned as a ceiling of physical threat for the entire roster for years, then the hierarchy that everybody has been operating within needs to be restructured. And restructuring means that some people who are currently positioned above Obafimi in the card's pecking order are going to find themselves below him. Not through any failure on their part, simply through the force of someone who is this good arriving at this level this fast. That is uncomfortable. That discomfort is real, and it is already shaping the dynamics of what happens next. 24 hours after Roman Reigns' return detonated the WrestleMania planning, Obafimi vs. Brock Lesnar just rewrote the equation from a completely different direction. The match that February 25 is pointing toward, Obafimi vs. Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 2026, is not a match that was on any prediction board with serious conviction before Raw this week. It is a match that now feels not just possible but necessary. The confrontation that happened on February 25 has generated the specific kind of unresolved heat that WrestleMania programs are built from. The question that it left hanging in the air: can Obafimi do to Brock Lesnar in a match what he did to him in that confrontation, over the full distance? With Lesnar prepared and motivated and focused entirely on making the answer to that question no is the most compelling WrestleMania match question Raw has produced in years. Obafimi at WrestleMania against Brock Lesnar is a match where the stakes extend beyond the immediate result. A win for Obafimi over Lesnar in a WrestleMania match, a real, sustained, complete win without asterisks or escape clauses, would represent the clearest possible signal that the generational baton in WWE has been passed to someone new. That the era defined by Brock Lesnar's specific brand of physical dominance is transitioning to something that looks like Obafimi. For Brock Lesnar, February 25 has created a motivation that money, championships, and contracts cannot manufacture. The specific, personal, public challenge of being treated the way Obafimi treated him on Raw is the kind of thing that moves Brock Lesnar in ways that other things do not. It is not about the program. It is not about the card placement. It is about restoring something that Obafimi took from him on February 25 in front of that entire arena and the millions watching at home. WrestleMania 2026 just found one of its most essential matches. The question is whether both men, and the company around them, are ready to tell the story it deserves. Obafimi attacked Brock Lesnar on Raw on February 25, 2026, and nothing about either man's standing in WWE is the same tonight as it was this time yesterday. This is not a viral moment. This is a career-defining event for one man and a career-challenging one for the other. I need everything in the comments immediately. Is Obafimi ready for a WrestleMania program with Brock Lesnar, or is this happening too fast for his own good? Did Brock Lesnar underestimate Obafimi on February 25, or did Obafimi simply outperform what anyone could have prepared for? And the question I need this community to answer with the full force of its collective knowledge is February 25, 2026, the night that the Brock Lesnar era in WWE officially began its ending? Drop every word of it in the comments. Share this video right now with every wrestling fan you know, because this is the raw moment that every serious wrestling conversation needs to be centered on this week. Subscribe to Wrestling News CC and hit every notification, because the fallout from Obafimi vs. Brock Lesnar is going to develop at a speed that requires you to be watching in real time. Nobody was supposed to handle Brock Lesnar like that. Obafimi did not receive that memo. And professional wrestling on February 25, 2026, will never be entirely the same for it.